Welcome to the Microsoft Partner Network podcast. Every week, we bring in industry leaders and Microsoft partners to talk about the big ideas shaping business and technology today. Today, we're in the studio with Yoli Chisholm, Director of Digital Marketing at Microsoft. She's done a lot of great work around building a culture of entrepreneurship, and she's here to talk with us about how partners can do the same in their organizations. Hey, Yoli, great to have you in today from New York.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yoli had a recent book come out called Crushing Corporate.
Yes.
She is the founder of the website WeLearnLive.com, really involved in a lot of the digital marketing efforts that we do here at Microsoft. But tell us a little bit about more about you and what you care about and marketing.
Yeah. So I've been a digital marketer for about 17 years. So I've seen sort of every sort of evolution of marketing innovation. I was around before they were doing email marketing, before banners became clickable, and have really enjoyed the journey of seeing how technology has impacted the way we do marketing. I'm really passionate about innovation. Mm-hmm. And sort of fostering that and nurturing that in the people that I work with. So it's been great to work with some of the marketers here at Microsoft as we've sort of learned, what are the new tactics and technologies we need to be leveraging to drive business impact. And I'm also passionate about entrepreneurship. And I think there's a lot we can learn from not only the technologies that entrepreneurs developed, but the skill sets that they use in driving growth in their businesses. And so hence my interest in intrapreneurship.
Intrapreneurship. Okay. What does it mean, Yoli?
So, the simplest way I can explain it, the way I make it sort of easily understood, is behaving like an entrepreneur within a corporation. And what does that mean? When you think about the risk that an entrepreneur takes, getting into building their own businesses. And so what are sort of the soft skills that are required? It's being open to failure, looking at failure from a different perspective and looking at how you can learn from failure. And so we build a sort of test and learn culture within our own team. And that means, we're open to hearing from ideas from everybody within the team and really look to have people be open to sharing their ideas. And that's one thing I would say, even if it's not your discipline, there are always ways you can be looking at how we're going to market and how we can optimize. So entrepreneurship is really about how do you behave like an entrepreneur within your organization, being willing to take risks, being willing every day to possibly be fired for something an innovative idea you've done. But here at Microsoft, we've really cultivated a culture of failing fast, testing and learning, being a learning culture. And with that, the team has been able to bring new capabilities into the marketing organization. Also things like fostering ways for people within the org to think about corporate innovation and actually bringing programs in that encourage that. So things like hackathons. Mm-hmm. And, that's something that we've done here at Microsoft that helps to foster corporate innovation.
Where do you think corporations or even companies, there's a lot of small businesses that are listening, right? Where companies kind of go wrong in that journey. And what are some examples that are doing it really well?
Well, I think if you think about sort of Maslow's law of hierarchy, that hierarchy, at the end of the day, when you think about it in the context of being a professional, we just want to be successful, right? We want to feed our families. We want to be successful. Right. And so it's really the fear of failure that I think is what holds companies, individuals, organizations back. Maintaining the status quo, sticking to what's worked. We just spent a week thinking about our plans for next year. And I really encourage the team to use what I call a 3-box strategy. And it's like really thinking about how do you manage the present, what are the things you're going to stop doing? And then how do you build the future? And I think where a lot of companies go wrong is that they're really not thinking about those other two boxes. They're managing the present, being reactive, but they're not thinking about what are the things we should stop doing. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, it requires analysis of how you've been working. And then they're not thinking about how do we manage the future, because a lot of times we're just sort of time constrained and, are just managing our businesses. So what a lot of other companies do is carve out time for strategic thinking, for you to work on your passions, because sometimes it's out of those passions that the best ideas come. Some companies, so Adobe, for example, has an initiative that they call Kickbox. It's innovation in a box. And they give you a gift card with $1,000 for you to focus on an idea and really use that $1,000 to sort of validate an idea. And, at the end of the period of that process, you share your idea with your peers and they kind of vote on it, and they can actually decide if it's something that they want to actually invest in.
Yeah.
There's an organization like 3M, for instance, has, Skunk Works, where they allow you to use 15% of your time just working on any idea you might have. It might not be in your discipline. It might not be relevant to your department, but that's where, ideas like the Post-it note and Scotch tape came out of those periods when people were just working on their sort of side hustles. There's an infamous story of like button from Facebook that came out of a hackathon.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, absolutely. It came out of a hackathon. And so, the smart companies have figured out that, we've hired smart people, but it does make sense to carve out some time to allow them to think about just sharing ideas, what are ways we can optimize the way we work, working on creative ideas. And out of that, some companies have been able to actually drive innovation within their own businesses.
Yeah. It's really hard to create a culture that can do that. It takes really good management, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I would say, it's, within a corporation, you need a manager who is open-minded, who recognizes and is committed to driving innovation and driving growth and not maintaining the status quo. So it's not easy, because sometimes we're just, we really are time constrained, and but it does, I think you have to have sort of a long-term mindset and a growth mindset and a recognition that driving growth doesn't come out of, the status quo. It really comes out of new ideas that might involve new technology, new ways, new revenue models, new ways of going to market. That side is sort of the creative side, and it requires carving out some time and commitment to it.
So how can you start thinking like an entrepreneur? What do you do?
Well, I think it's really just building a culture where you are constantly learning. I think as a professional, if you think that you have sort of mastered your discipline, you will get left behind, particularly in this environment that we're living in. So as a marketer, for example, one of the things I do is I think of myself as a practitioner, and I test things outside of my professional time. So for example, if I wanted to learn, well, how does Facebook advertising really work? I might decide I'm going to use it on my blog. I will use Facebook advertising and test if I can drive traffic to my blog. And that's work that I do outside of my job to understand the platform, to understand the tactics. And as a manager, I encourage my team to work on leveraging new marketing tactics outside of their day-to-day work. it's ironic. Sometimes we think the more we move up the ladder, the less of a practitioner and the less of an executioner we become.
Yeah.
Because we have to think more strategic. But I have found in the marketing field that you still have to figure out how to keep your hands in the sort of day-to-day dirty work, because that's where the innovation is happening. But I think just having the mindset that you are constantly going to learn and cultivate sort of new skills within your discipline. We're finding that as marketers and as sellers, there are modern ways, for example, for a seller, it's no longer about cold calling. It's no longer about taking folks out and playing golf to close the deal. It's really about prospecting, leveraging digital tactics to prospect. It's about being present in social media as a seller. It's about having a content strategy where people see you as a subject matter expert. All of that is additional time. It's having the mindset to be willing to learn and sort of being a lifelong student and honing your craft in your field.
Yeah.
And
it does take time. I mean, I'm thinking about social selling and building out your authority in this space. I mean, you need to take the time every day to put out a tweet or two, get on LinkedIn, like things, share things.
Absolutely.
I try to take 20 minutes a day, and you have to cognizantly say, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And not budge on it. Like, make it a calendar invite to yourself.
Absolutely. And we've actually found sellers that are actually socially active have 2 times the amount of opportunities. So we've been really trying to work on how do we coach sellers to, have the right kind of authentic profile in social media.
Yeah.
And how do we encourage them to be active? And it's not about being perfect. And that's another thing that entrepreneurs do really well, right? It's about doing.
Yeah.
Right? Doing, you're going to learn as you go. You don't have to have the perfect plan. There's a great book called Rework that just says planning is guessing, because for the most part, right. And as an entrepreneur, you can build a business plan. You can have the most, the most perfect sort of strategy pitch deck.
Yeah.
But we all know that
nothing ever goes to plan.
Yeah. So that's another sort of, as a professional within a corporation, you also need to sort of be willing to move fast and have sort of, your plan not necessarily be in stone, and being willing to pivot. That's another thing that entrepreneurs do really well, at least the ones that are successful and survive, learn to recognize the patterns when it says, oh, it's not working, let's pivot. And we need to do the same, as a corporate professional, no matter what our discipline is move with speed, test and learn, be willing to take risks, experiment, share your ideas. One other thing I also say is coming from a place of yes, or why not, right? So quite often you find in the corporate world, people are afraid to share their ideas because, we're surrounded by really smart people. Mm-hmm. Right. And everybody's going to find a reason why your idea shouldn't work. I really encourage my team to come from a place of yes, or a place of, well, why not? Or even if you have criticisms in terms of, or holes and see that, this will not work, but can you find a way to make it work? Are you willing, when somebody suggests an idea, to think about, why we should do it versus why we shouldn't do it?
Yeah.
I call it coming from a place of yes.
Absolutely. Is there a book on that?
I think there is.
Yeah.
I think there is.
I know I've seen it on a coaster for sure.
At least, and if there isn't, there should be a book on that.
You've talked a little bit about the soft skills, and we just did a piece on emotional intelligence and EQ versus IQ. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you think are key soft skills to have in your teams and to help develop?
Absolutely. I think, one of the biggest skills you can nurture is just being self-aware. Mm-hmm. They have shown that people who are successful tend to have a high EQ. And people who have a high EQ can be more successful than people with a high IQ. And it's because they are very self-aware about the things that they're good at, the things that trigger them. They have cultivated great communication skills. They know how to read other people. They look for win situations within interactions. Having emotional intelligence, to me, is like one of the key factors to just success in business and life. It's a certain level of maturity and also expecting the best from others. And coming from that position. Because a lot of times success in the corporate world is really about, how well are you able to sell in your ideas, get buy-in, get others to support you. This is all about relationship. It's all about communication. Some of my biggest lessons have been, as a business person, have been around, all the times that it's not been about what I'm saying, but the way I've said it. And that's also just sort of just being mature as a corporate person and having a high EQ and cultivating and nurturing that. We've done some training around mindfulness. We've done some training around. I
just did my 8-week mindfulness. I read the book.
Right.
I loved it.
And it's
eye-opening.
It absolutely is. And it's been a game changer for our whole division has done mindfulness training.
Nice.
And we had Dr. Mike Gervais, who is one of the trainers for the Seahawks. And they use mindfulness to drive sort of peak performance, and there've been a lot of lessons that we've been able to learn from that. And that's why they had been quite
doing
successful.
Really well.
Yeah. The other training that we've done is nonviolent communication and really understanding, what are the things that the words we use and how we communicate with others that sometimes trigger us. It's actually been very helpful in nurturing effective communicators, because that is key to sort of driving people to support your business ideas, and also key to understanding, having empathy for our customers. All of that is tied together. So back to your point about EQ and IQ, I think having a high EQ makes you a better professional. And also a better marketer, at least in my field. And, having empathy for whatever your customer segment is, it really, what will happen is you actually will build better products because you understand what their business needs are. You're listening for their business needs versus telling them that these are the features and functionality they need.
Yeah.
So I think, EQ is all encompassing. It can impact, your life as well as your business life and how you manage your business and how you drive your business. So
it really is the way to think about yourself and how you show up, and then the kind of people you want on your team.
Exactly.
I'm all around. I love Travis Bradbury. He created that book, Emotional Intelligence, and having that self-awareness is really tough.
It is.
It's really tough. I mean,
it takes a few lessons too, right?
And you have to think so much about who's your audience and how are you delivering your message. And it's so easy to get fired up about something and just want to storm in.
I've had some hard lessons about that. And but it's worth doing the work.
Absolutely.
To, just to understand yourself and what triggers you, and also understand how you could, remedy a situation if you had, reacted differently. Owning your stuff when you've gone wrong.
Yeah. Right.
In the corporate world, sometimes we're so determined to just be right.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's not even a corporate world thing. I mean, definitely. Right. But in life, people just like to be right.
Right.
That's pretty normal.
Yes.
So in your book, you talked a little bit about the 4 R's, and I think you've kind of we've talked around them a little bit, but, how can we bring that culture of entrepreneurship into our daily life? What is the 4 R's?
So, part of the book is sort of designed for folks who are coming into the corporate world. And then also for folks who have been professionals in the corporate world for a long time. And the 4 R's, the first one is what I call is your reputation, which I think is the most important currency you have as a professional. Your reputation precedes you. Your reputation is what gets you sort of, to the next level. And within that, I talk about things like you need to let your work speak for itself. So you lead with doing, not with talking.
Love that.
And sometimes that's really hard to do, especially, if you're a smart person, but I think you should always lead with doing and let your work speak for itself. And then the flip side of that is being able to speak for your work. And how I define that is having clarity around your role, your responsibility, what you're going to deliver, and not being afraid to check with folks you were always working in teams. Just do a check and make sure you've got alignment on, what's your lane.
Yeah, right.
So you need to let your work speak, but you also need to be able to speak for your work. And you do that upfront, which means that you're going to be accountable whether you were successful or whether you fail. And people respect others who own when they fail or when they've messed up. And then the third part of sort of your reputation is adding value when you speak. Yeah. So when you speak, whether you're coming into a meeting, whether it's one-on-one with your coworkers, you need to add value when you speak. Lead with your work. Let your work speak for itself. Then you need to add value when you speak. A lot of times we're more concerned with showing how smart we are versus really sort of adding to the conversation.
Yeah.
And so that's what I talk about when I talk about reputation. And then I also talk about the realities of just work, And in that category, I do talk about EQ versus IQ. And then when you're sort of moving up the corporate ladder, or even as an entrepreneur, you have to think about the sphere of control. And what I talk about there is, there are areas that you have influence over and where you have no influence and you have no control. And you should not spend any time on things that fall in that bucket. So if you have no influence and no control, then you shouldn't spend time complaining about it. Like, it is just a waste of time. And then there are areas where you have influence, but you have no control. And in those cases, you should never be afraid to sort of state your opinion, right? But be willing to accept if you're overridden, because you are not the final decision maker. But you should always be willing to add value and state your opinion. And that's where you can spend some of your time. But most of your time should be spent on the areas where you have influence and control. And so sometimes we struggle to figure out how we prioritize everything that we need to get done and the things we care about. And that's how I help myself sort of prioritize is what's within my sphere of control. What are the areas that I have influence over and I control. And those tend to be the areas that we, can be successful in. Those are the wins that we have year over year. So being able to kind of discern what is something that you have no influence over and no control and you're spending too much on can be helpful. And then the third area I talk about is risks. And this is really where, intrapreneurship comes. So if you have the entrepreneurship mindset, you're really willing to take risks. And you're willing to share your ideas. You're not afraid to get rejected or
Put yourself on the line.
Exactly. And you're willing to be accountable. And the soft skills you need to learn to sort of get buy-in is around being a very effective communicator, really being able to distill, what is the core value that your idea is going to bring to the business. And that takes risks, and it means you should be willing to fail. That's another component of being a risk taker. You must be willing to fail. And then the fourth R is rewards. I really and truly do believe that regardless of what you do, your discipline, your job, what type of job you have, we can all find purpose in our work. Whether it's at the most basic level of the dignity of just putting in a good day's work and doing it at an excellent level, or whether it really is, how do I find purpose in my job as a marketer? Sometimes we as a society have sort of put certain jobs, as having a higher value in terms of purpose. But anybody who is looking to be excellent at their craft and works at their craft and is constantly learning and, becoming a master in their field, I think can find purpose in their work. And the other side of rewards are the colleagues and potential partners that you find. We come into
the network. Yeah,
absolutely. So we come into the business world, and part of the book I talk about the using your time in the corporation to learn how to build a business, because a corporation was once a startup. Right. And so sometimes folks tend to think that they just are spending their time just waiting to get out there and, start their own business. But you look around you, the network of people you've built that you work with can help you in your areas, and really being able to enlist your colleagues. And I think those are part of the rewards. In addition, we also are able to connect with and find mentors. And I think whether you're in a business or whether you're in the corporate world, finding those that are doing things at a high level and at a peak performance and from whom you can learn is also what you should also be looking at, cultivating.
Well, I hope y'all got the 4. That was super.
Almost got through it there.
Super helpful, Yoli. Those are some really awesome, helpful tips for our partners. And I think your advice is for each of the partner organizations, how do you create that culture? But yourself, how do you look at yourself?
Yes.
Whether you're the CEO or you're just the manager or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are, every person can take what you're saying to foster intrapreneurship.
Yes. And you as the, business leader, can model the behavior you want to see in the rest of your team or your business or your employees.
Lead by example. Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming into the studio today. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and please rate and review if you like what you hear. Also, follow us at MS Partner on Twitter and Facebook. Tune in next week for more great insights from business leaders and innovators shaping the tech industry today.